In a faraway land, there were big mountains covered in soft white snow. Here lived Gideon, the gentle giant. Unlike the scary giants from the old stories, Gideon was as nice as a sunny morning and as gentle as the evening. Every day he took care of the huge wilderness around him. He made sure all was calm and peaceful. One cold evening, as the sun went down behind the snowy mountains, Gideon started his nightly routine. He loved this routine because it was for the animals and the land he cared about so much. First, Gideon went to the great lake. The water there sparkled under the sky, looking like a big shiny mirror. He filled his giant watering can from the lake's clear waters. Every night, he watered old trees and pretty flowers, talking to them in a deep, soothing voice, telling them to grow strong and lovely. After finishing at the lake, Gideon walked through the whispering woods. The trees were old and wise. They seemed to whisper stories. As he walked, Gideon listened to their tales, nodding and smiling. He also brushed off the snow from their branches. When the stars began to sparkle in the night sky, Gideon went to the meadows. The small forest animals were waiting for him. They knew Gideon had something special for them at bedtime. "Good evening, friends," Gideon said in a soft voice. "Good evening, Gideon," the rabbits chirped and the mice squeaked. The deer bowed their heads in greeting. Gideon smiled and pulled out handfuls of dream dust from his big pockets. This magical sand helped all living creatures fall into a peaceful sleep. He sprinkled it gently over the animals, who yawned happily, their eyes twinkling. "Sweet dreams, little ones," Gideon whispered, as they snuggled into the soft underbrush or burrowed into the warm earth, quickly falling asleep. Then Gideon climbed to the higher slopes where it was cooler and the wind was stronger. Here the mountain goats and wild horses roamed. They too were waiting for their turn with the dream dust and Gideon's warm presence. After making sure these creatures were ready for a peaceful night, Gideon sat on his favorite big rock, looking over the valley. He took out a small, beautifully carved flute from his coat. As he played, the melody floated through the mountains like a lullaby for everyone. The music was soft and slow, echoing the night's calm rhythm. It was filled with Gideon's love and care, promising protection and peace. Far below, in the village at the base of the mountain, people paused their evening work to listen. The music comforted their hearts, reminding them that Gideon, their guardian, was watching over them. That night, however, Gideon's tune was a bit sad. The next day, builders from the city planned to start a road through the whispering woods. Gideon worried about the trees and the little animals living there. Determined to protect his friends, Gideon decided to visit the village. Putting aside his flute, he made his way down the mountain quietly, a skill he had mastered over many years. When he reached the village, Gideon knelt beside the house of the village elder, careful not to wake anyone. He tapped gently on the window with his finger. The leader, a kind woman named Elara, came to the window, surprised. "Gideon, what brings you here so late?" she asked quietly. "Hello, Elara," Gideon started, his voice as calm as a still lake. "I need to talk about the road you plan to build. It will hurt the woods and the little ones living there." Elara looked sad. "I didn't know," she admitted. "Tell me more, Gideon." So Gideon talked about the trees and the animals and how the road would disturb everything. He spoke until the stars began to fade and the first light of dawn colored the sky. Elara listened and promised, "We will find another way. I will talk to the builders. The woods will be safe." Relieved, Gideon nodded. "Thank you, Elara. Thank you for listening." Happy, Gideon returned to his mountain. That night, his flute music was joyful again. He kept playing every night, watching over the land he loved. The next day, Gideon decided to help the village understand why nature was so important. He spent the day collecting stories and treasures from nature, like colorful leaves, stones, and flowers. He planned to show them to the village children. That evening, after making sure the forest animals were asleep, Gideon took his collection to the village. He set up a display in the town square. The next morning, the villagers were curious about the display. The children loved the colorful leaves and stones. Elara taught the children about each of them. "These leaves are from the great cedar which protects our village," she explained. "These stones are from the river where the water sings." The children listened and learned. Seeing this, Gideon stepped out and said, "I have many more stories to share." From then on, every full moon, Gideon would bring new treasures and stories. He taught everyone about nature and how to care for it. The village grew smarter and kinder. The children learned to love the woods and often listened to Gideon, their giant friend. Every night, Gideon felt happy as he played his flute. The valley was safe and loved, all thanks to everyone who listened and learned. As the stars shone brightly, Gideon knew the peace he nurtured would last forever. The end.